And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what?
China.
All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
This is First African Baptist Church, the oldest black church in North America. The building, built by slaves. The gentleman that laid the first brick laid the last. The balcony hold pews that actually were built by slaves. They have the oldest information in this building. That information is written in cursive Hebrew writing.
Look on the outside edge of the pews. Look on the outside edge of the pews where you are. You see the different markings alongside the edge of the pews? They represent the different tribes that made up our congregation back then and spoke over 6 different languages among themselves. These were small tribes enslaved by larger tribes and sold to Europeans as they came along the African coast. One of the major languages they spoke back then was that of Aramaic and also too of Hebrew, which means the writings read from bottom to top. Assalamu alaikum. Which means peace be unto you. It's not a Muslim term. It's actually the same greeting which Christ gave into the disciples when he met them in that region. Most countries in that region read from right to left. Here in America, we read from left to right. That's why the pastors in the St. Glass window up front here are going in numbers 2 through 7 from the right-hand side over to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left. This gentleman right here. Huh? What happened? No, this is the gentleman right here with the camera in his hand. Wave a hand. Pastor
James Wesley Carr.
Yeah, James Wesley Carr. No. What's your name?
Oh, Kelly Richardson.
Kelly Richardson.
Pastor Kelly Richardson.
He is a great-great-grand-nephew?
Yeah.
Nephew of one of our first pastors. Wow. Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's his uncle right here in the corner of the actual St. Glass window here to your left.
You got the eyes.
You look just like him. Got the same eyes. Anyway, come on, guys. Come on.
That's funny.
What's that up there looking like?
I'm so glad you're here because you can bring great clarity. Can you tell us a little bit about the Sephardic Jews and how they were scattered because they went west?
I sure can.
Because the reason why I want to is because a lot of them, and a lot of people don't know this, are in the Caribbean.
They are.
In the islands.
And you're one of them. I know that.
I'm one of them.
I know that.
Because, a lot of folk don't know that those roots are there. One of the first batches of slaves that came to Jamaica, they were the Sephardic Jews. It's documented.
And they're all over the Caribbean, South America, Central America, and even the South Central United States.
Wow.
And DNA testing is a factor in all this now.
just flooded the world. We smothered culture. We smothered knowledge. We erased history and rewrote it our way. Myself, my grandfather is 100% Ashkenazi Jewish. Claiming to be Jewish, Ashkenazi Jewish is just a conspiracy. White men claiming to be of tribes of Israel when I'm Germanic. You know, I have no ties to Israel, no ties to Judaism. You know, except loosely written history that's been whitewashed over for centuries, and you know,
from the Renaissance.
Oh yeah, right. You wipe everything clean. It's funny how exactly the Renaissance. It's this rebirth, but it's white rebirth. I think at the same exact time the Renaissance is happening, Columbus is sailing to America and committing genocide.
There's only one true ethnic Jew, the Mizrahi Jew, because they are Africans, and if you read the original Bible written in Phoenician Hebrew, they're not. Jewish people are not Europeans. The modern Jews in Israel are Russians or Khazars to be precise, from Russia. I learned it from my grandfather that he was because he was an Ashkenazi Jew.
Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
Yeah, it will be hard to try and make sense of this story, but I will try. I think it all started in Fashion Week in Paris earlier this week when Kanye West was wearing a White Lives Matter t-shirt, and that sparked a controversy. And then later on, he was interviewed by Tucker Carlson on Fox News, in which interview he made a few comments that were very problematic, including one about Jared Kushner, the former Trump advisor, and saying that the peace deal that he did with Israel was motivated by money and greed, which is, as we know, an anti-Semitic trope. And then things just gotten worse, and he took to Twitter and to Instagram, first on Instagram posting a private conversation between him and the rapper Puff Daddy, and claiming that Jews are the fake Jews and that the black community is actually the real Jews. Yeah, it will be hard to try and make sense of this story, but I will try. I think it all started in... Yeah, it will be hard to try and make sense of this story, but I will try. I think it all started in Fashion Week in Paris earlier this week when Kanye West... Yeah, it will be hard to try and make sense of this story, but I will try. I think it all started in Fashion...
And by the way, we blood of Christ. We blood of Moses. We're not just a color in a crayon box. And if we knew that, who we really were, we'd treat each other differently. We'd treat ourselves differently. So when you say, I'm black and I'm proud, like, but of what? What concept are we understanding? They say, go see the African History Museum. Why do they start when the boats came? Why don't they start with the drums?
When we was kings.
No, they don't want it, but we are kings. Mm-hmm. But the 400 years doesn't have to deal with slavery. It has to deal with the Bible. It has to deal with us being disobedient to God. Right. And that's why we farm land that isn't our own. Record labels, the NBA, Hollywood. These boys be scared. They be sitting there. Michael B. Jordan be telling my cousin, like, man, I want to do what Ye do, but I'm just, I'm right here. Or, like Kevin Hart, like, man, I like that. I'm envious of what Dave Chappelle could do.
להתחיל לאסוף את המסתננים, לא צריך לחכות לבג"ץ, לא צריך שום דבר.
אני רואה חרא מחוץ לבית שלי, יריקות, פסיכופטים, אנשים שרק מחפשים איך לרצוח אותי בעיניים שלהם, אבל אף אחד לא מאמין לנו. אנחנו גזענים כדי לרצות לשמור על החיים שלנו ועל השפיעות שלנו. אז אני גאה בלהיות גזענית. אני גאה בלהיות גזענית. אם אני גזענית בשביל לשמור על החיים שלי, אז אני גאה.
את עם כושי לנסוע! את נשואה עם כושי! לכי את והוא! תלכי מפה! תלכי! את נשואה עם כושי, לכי! לא מתביישת!
נחשף ביערות בורקינה פאסו של קניבלים נטו נטו. שלום למנהיג השבט קזבובו.
שלום עליכם. אברהם יצחק יעקב, יודע עברית, שולחן, חשבונית, קובי פרץ, מוטלזי מוטאו.
מר קזבובו, כולנו כאן בישראל מופתעים ונרגשים נוכח האפשרות שתעלו ארצה.
קזבובו שמח, 2000 שנות גלות נגמר, רואים אור בקצה של מנהרה.
אתם בטוחים שאתם יהודים?
התחלנו על חנן. אם הוא שחור הוא לא יהודי?
לא בגלל שהוא שחור, הוא...
מה הוא מה?
קניבל.
ומי אתה שתגיד לו מה לאכול, אם הוא קניבל הוא לא יהודי?
אולי תבוא, תעשה אצלנו שבת?
זה לא שיש לי משהו אישי נגדכם, אבל הפלשמורה למשל תקועים.
Want to say peace and blessings to everyone. Want to apologize for the tardiness, being late here. Also want to apologize to one of my videos. There were duplicate videos, got out of whack, so I was trying to put my clips together to play for you guys to listen prior to our discussion. So what I'll do is I'm going to let you hear as we progress in this lesson a discussion between two individuals. I'm not going to let the cat out the bag, but so when you hear it, you will see where I'm going at with this, because I'm sure you guys are aware of what occurred with Kanye West, his whole situation, the things that he has stated, his accounts being disabled for anti-Semitism. And he made some comments in his defense, as far as defending himself, saying that all blacks, he said blacks are Jews or whatever, and that he cannot be accused of anti-Semitism. So we have a lot to unpack here, a whole lot to unpack. I know this is a unscheduled live or unscheduled playbook, but you know, when there's a situation like this, I like to do a playbook on it, and we go back over, we replay certain things so that way we can get proper clarity. So I want to start off with dealing with Kanye West. I really want to deal with him. But before we go on, before we get into this discussion here, let me know if you can hear if my audio sound good here, if my audio is okay, because I know that our last session, the audio was sounding really weird. I went back and actually listened to the audio. It sounded weird. My voice, it had my voice dragging and all that, so I had to reset my audio. It was some weird stuff that was happening here. So if you can hear my audio, just go ahead and type 1 inside your comment section. And if I am having audio issues, type 2 inside the comment section. All right. Great. Appreciate you guys. And some of this you guys are already familiar with, because a lot of this stuff I have to teach over and over again, like the Most High instructed Moses to do with Joshua. Rehearse. The situation that occurred with the Amalekites, he said, hey, rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, right? So we're going to have to put this information to memory, family, because we're living in a day and time that social media is really taking away freedom of speech, and it's really gearing, or should I say, agendas is starting to come to the top of this food chain, so to speak, of social media. You know, and we're going to deal with Kanye West situation, but I can assure you, all of us are dealing with situations right now, and we don't get the type of protection certain groups get. You know, Kanye West has said all kinds of things to insult his own community, from slavery being volunteered, or we didn't fight back, and all this other stuff that he said towards slavery. And, you know, a lot of things that he said that was very insulting to our community. But guess what? Everything was cool. But once he says something, and even though it's being focused on the second part of his statement, but he says something, and he went into some other lines here, and we'll get into it. But he says something that offended a specific demographics of people, and they got him disabled. Whoopi went through this, and Whoopi is she practices Judaism. I proved that when I shared her testimony. Goldberg is a Jewish name from her mother's side of the family. So, but we're going to have to really go into this so that way you guys have proper clarity. And I normally do my shout outs here, but I'm just going to get right into it just for the sake of time. But again, family, this is where we have to listen with intelligence. Family, we have to learn how to use this system for our community, because we have people that are in church, right? And I'm not going to mention their names, but we have to start using the system like how they would use the system against us. See, because of the disposition of our community, I taught on this a number of times. Traumatic experiences can hack, it can alter your reproductive system. And so we may not have gone through the situation or the things that our ancestors have gone through of being kidnapped, in other words, raptured, thrown on those slave ships, raped, everything that's, imaginable and unimaginable done to them. Right. But being that we are, their descendants, right? Their reproductive system changed. We don't have to go through the same thing they went through to have the same phobias. For example, police officers, law enforcement, right? So we as a people, we've been hacked. And many know that we have a phobia for contacting the legal system, contacting law enforcement when it comes to dealing with people that are coming against us. So we try to keep it real. Well, guess what? These people know that and they take advantage of it. But guess what? Enough is enough. I am not going to sit back and let people from other communities violate and really, get on that line, tippy-toeing that line, getting over into hate crimes. And for me, for my family, for my cousin, for my grandmother, and all my whole family, we had to deal with what have gone into hate crimes by people that call themselves Christians, all because of the thing that has been built up about us waking up or coming to the understanding of being Israelites. Right. So they made this term Hebrew Israelites into a negative term, and now trying to, push these labels on different people. I am an Israelite. I'm a blood descendant of Israel, proven through genetics, and it's also been proven through family tradition. And we have proof with the church in Savannah that substantiate that. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into this, family. Let's talk about Kanye here. Let's get into it. Let's build this up here, and we'll do shout outs as we go on. Let's stretch this out. Kanye West, anti-Semitic. Kanye West, anti-Semitic. That is the question. Anti-Semitic. Before we get started, let's go to Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 19. This is what it says. It says, "O Yahweh, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction." The Gentiles, in other words, nations, family, please go into the playlist. Either look up foundational playlist or go to the words of confusion. Please watch the lesson that I did on Jew and Gentile words of confusion. Because again, in the primitive root of this, the Latin word for Gentiles, I can't remember off the top of my head, but you will not see all who are not Jews as part of the definition, because Gentiles, the primitive, or should I say, the Proto-Indo-European word, or the old Latin, so to speak. I'm not even sure if that's a term. I'm saying old Latin, but anyway, you will not see all those that are not Jews there, because it simply means nations, those that are begat from nations. When you start seeing how Gentiles is being used, it comes from the church, all those that who are not Jews. And then the word Jew is now being used synonymously with all of Israel. Those are words of confusion. And a man by the name of what's his name? Benjamin Friedman. I have his lecture on that under the lecture section. Please watch his lecture. And he goes in. He is a from the Jewish community as we know them. He's from that community, and he blew the whistle on the agenda. He blew the whistle on those words of confusion that I taught about in that lesson. But nevertheless, it says here, the Gentiles, in other words, the other nations or the nations, right, shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit. So it's saying all these other nations, right, that's outside of Israel, guess what? They're going to come, right? Because here it's just going to say the nations, but all those other nations that are not part of Israel, that are not blood descendants of Israel, they are going to make it clear. They're going to say, hey, we inherited lies. We've been taught wrong. And we see this happening right now because guess what? Some of the video clips that I played, you heard from their own mouth, from the descendants of the Ashkenazi Jews, you heard from their own mouths stating that they inherited lies. That, hey, matter of fact, let me let you hear what they say. I'm gonna let one of them play real quick. I'm not gonna go through it again, but let me let one of them speak. I want you to hear their words.
There's only one true ethnic Jew, the Mizrahi Jew, because they are Africans, and if you read the original Bible written in Phoenician Hebrew, they're not. Jewish people are not Europeans. The modern Jews in Israel are Russians or Khazars to be precise, from Russia. I learned it from my grandfather that he was because he was an Ashkenazi Jew.
Now, family, you see, and we're going to go into this, right? But anything but the Negro, anyone can be from Israel, under the law of return by way of conversion, can be a Jew, can be Israel, but our people. And I really want to talk about that. You know, I played some clips of some clips of hate that's being directed towards people that look like you and I over there in Israel, being called Kushi. Kushi is the N-word over in Israel. And you see, and you heard with your own ears how they were being received. So, family, let's get into it. And I want to say this, family, and I know there's always a few in the chat. When you use the word African, and I hear people say Shem was not African or whatever, Israel's not Africa, that tells me you don't know your history. You don't know the geographical location. Northeast Africa, guess what? Is the Middle East. The Middle East is Northeast Africa. It wasn't until 1906, right? Army general, not general, but admiral. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Normally I'm pretty good with my memory, but very tiresome weekend, a lot I had to do. But in a nutshell, they came up with this term, coined the term Middle East. Right. So we have to stop majoring in the minors. Matter of fact, let me play a couple of clips just for those that may come into the chat and say, oh, you know what? Israel or Shem wasn't Africa. Do you know that the landmass that is being referred to Africa was also called Ethiopia at one time? It was also called Egypt at one time. And it stretched beyond the borders of what you see today in the modern maps. Northeast Africa, right, which they refer to as the Middle East now, was always called Africa at one time, and it created a man-made canal. But let me let you hear this for those that keep pushing this Africa stuff. And the word Africa, Afar, comes from the name of Abraham and Keturah, his wife after Sarah died, comes from their sons. So you could look up Josephus and other older theologians, they confirm that. So Afar or Africa comes from Afar, which is a Shemitic name. So the name Africa actually has Shemitic origins. So family, let's stop majoring in the minor with that stuff, because again, Africa is a landmass, right? But guess what? Israel had its own territory, right? Just like other countries had its own territories, right? Israel was part of the continent of Africa, just like if we properly count the Middle East, then we could say Africa has over 70 plus countries, nations that's living in that continent. Right? You don't hear the Asians saying that about Asia, and you don't hear the Europeans saying that about Europe. You don't hear the same things that we're making into arguments. Now, guess what? We're Israelites. I am an Israelite, blood descendant of the ancient Israelites. And so what? The continent Israel refers into the continent of Africa. At one time, it was called Ethiopia back in the time of the 17th century, the 18th century. But again, I am an Israelite. All right. So let's not major in the minors. Here's a couple of clips and we'll get into the lesson.
Most Egyptologists and anthropologists, archaeologists of the Eurocentric persuasion will say that Egypt is in Africa. They had to concede that, but then they still draw the line by saying that they weren't Africans like that. In other words, they weren't dark-skinned people. And of course, this is all part of the Great Deception. And the reality is that if they give up Egypt, ancient Kemet, if they give that up and say that that was a part of Black Africa, then they will also have to give up Israel. And that's why they draw the line at Egypt, because if they give up Egypt, they've got to give up Israel.
Now, we're going to go over here, and I'm going to show you where Israel sits on the African tectonic plate, which means that Israel is northeast Africa. Now, when we look at this map, this is the Sinai. Okay? This is the Red Sea. This is Egypt. This is the Sinai. This is Israel. All right, this is Saudi Arabia over here. Now, if you see this in Hebrew, it says Haluach Africani, the African plate. Here it is right here. Israel is sitting right here. Israel is sitting on the Haluach Africani, which means that Israel is northeast Africa.
Without question, we are in northeast Africa. We are landlocked to Egypt, with the exception of the Suez Canal, which was a man-made ditch, a boundary now between, in fact, it's not even really a boundary anymore since Egypt has reclaimed the Sinai Peninsula. But nevertheless, even those of us who are Pan-Africanists in our thinking and Afrocentric, we forget and we leave off that portion of northeast Africa and don't want to claim anything beyond that.
Europeans classified this area as the Middle East. And then since this the Middle East, the other question, where the Middle West? Where the Middle North and where the Middle South? They don't have no geographical terms like that.
All right. So I want to make sure y'all understand that. All right. Just so that way we can start knocking down some of the poor teachings that are circulating around our community that many are mocking us for. All right. Now, this is not trying to throw shade or anything at anyone or anyone particular, but I just thought I'd mention that. So again, let's get back into this. The Gentiles, in other words, the other nations, all the nations, right, outside of Israel, said, shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit. So guess what? When you start dealing with deception, man, you have what is called collateral damage, right? The deceiver don't care about certain people within their own groups that they deceive, just so that way they can push forth an agenda. And guess what is happening right in those Christian groups that are coming at our community? You have some that's so bent on having their personal agendas, their personal whatever vendettas they have against me and others, that they are so they don't care who they step over within their groups. Right? They'll lie and deceive their own people just so that way they can push forward their agenda. So again, inherited lies, right? So they don't have a problem. The Hasatan don't have a problem with deceiving certain people that's within that camp. Collateral damage. So my strength is In other words, the one who empowered him to live a triumphant, victorious life and to faithfully proclaim the word of the Most High to the people of his generation. So I'm not going to get into this. I really broke this down. I meant to take all of this out, but I'm not going to get into this. But let's go straight to the tweet here. Let's go straight to the tweet. This is Kanye West's tweet that was removed by Twitter, right? It says is I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake from, excuse me, let me read it over. I'm going too fast. Let me slow down. I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. The funny thing is, I actually can't be anti-Semitic because Black people are actually Jews. Also, you guys have toyed with me and tried to blackball anyone who ever opposes your agenda. So let's highlight a couple of things here. Let's start with this first line here, right? When I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. Family, no matter how you look at it, that is wrong, right? Kanye West, one of my things that irritates me about him is that he's all over the place. He's a billionaire, right? He don't have to answer to nobody, basically. That's why Trump has the attitude that he has, because he's a billionaire, and billionaires have a certain air about them. But Kanye West, for some reason, it's like there's a disconnect there, right? This right here say he's going to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, right? Many of you guys are business professionals. You know, you had to take what is called sensitivity training. In other words, you had to be conscientious of other groups that may not be part of your group, your ethnic group, right? This right here, this line right here is what got his channel shut down. This is what got his channel disabled, because technically this is a threat, regardless of what demographics of people it's pointed to. That is a threat. I'm going DEFCON 3. Come on, family. You cannot make comments like that about any particular group. You have to understand, family. We have to, like the scriptures tells us, we're going to be, held accountable for every idle word, every word that comes out of our mouth. We're going to be held accountable for. So you cannot say that in your right mind, say that this is a good comment to make. This is not a good statement, no matter how you look at it, right? I can't rock with this statement right here. I can't, regardless of what group of people is this targeted to. I can't, because this is not something that a person should say, right? You can't say this. You cannot say this, right? And for those that don't understand DEFCON 3, that's from a military perspective, that is a military term. That is a military term. It's actually DEFCON, right? Did he say DEFCON or DEFCON? I think he said DEFCON, but from a military term, it's DEFCON, which means increase in force readiness above the required for normal readiness. In other words, that is being on the alert for war, right? That is getting that is being prepared, being for battle. That's now is saying that things are at a level where as though it's starting to grab attention, and now it's time to bring everyone together. In other words, increase the readiness above normal levels, right? But in his mind, and because just by him saying DEFCON versus DEFCON, just that in itself tell you that is what he means is taking it to the highest, like nuclear type thing. In his mind, he ready to go nuclear, right? So this is why we have to be careful, family. That's why, again, Kanye West, he said a lot of stuff that I just can't agree. He did a lot of stuff, from having a Bible version with his name on it, right? From referring to himself as well, actually getting into all the satanic stuff that he was into. Not sure if he's still into it, the Freemasonry and all that other stuff. I'm not sure if he's still into it. And I'm not going to slander him or bear false witness, rather, if he's not into it. But he did a lot of stuff that you would think that his channel would have been disabled for that. But it got disabled for what we're going over right now. All right. So again, family, I can't rock with him. I cannot rock with Kanye. I can't do it. I'm not falling on the sword for Kanye. You know what I mean? And he did it, he had no other choice but to apologize for these statements right here. This first line right here. Right? He had no other choice. But when you go into the other portion, when we get there soon, shortly, right? He apologized for that as well. But that's a whole nother, we'll get there when we'll address it once we get there. But again, family, we cannot condone this right here. We cannot condone this, right? This is something that he should not have put out. He's a billionaire, right? He should be establishing his own social media, his means of communication. He should be doing his own stuff, his own networking. Not worried about what people think of being banned from Twitter, because he should be able to establish his own network. With $1 billion plus, he, according to what I research, he talking about almost $6 billion. Basically, he's technically richer, has more wealth, accumulated wealth than Donald Trump. Anyway, let me move forward. All right. So are these comments anti-Semitic? Are these comments anti-Semitic? That's the question that we should ask. Are these comments anti-Semitic? All right. Let's go to the next. Right. So again, the Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies. So I want to just share something here. Right before I share this on your screen, let me bring up a video here. And I want you guys to pay attention to this video, right? This is what I was trying to add here, but I wasn't able to do so. But let me add this video here. Let me add this video. And I want you guys to pay attention. I'm going to, let's see here. And we're going to address that word Semitic. So family, don't think that I'm not going to address it. I'm going to address a lot, but I want to make sure you guys follow me on this in terms of here a couple of things here, because it's a lot of things I have to address. Let me see. Videos. Where's the videos at? Tell you, seem like sometimes Windows be doing its own thing. Let's go here. All right, I'm going to pull up this discussion here between George Galloway, right, and pull it up here
today, saying Ken Livingstone.
Right, let me pause it here.
Talked about the facts. Why do you believe it was anti-Semitic?
Well, George expressed it.
I want you to pay attention here.
Than Ken Livingstone. George said,
let's see here. Let me pause it here real quick. All right. This guy right here that's on your screen, he's Jewish, and he's having a discussion with someone that's not Jewish, and they're dealing with anti-Semitism. They're dealing with Zionists. They're dealing with, the Nazis and all that. So listen closely, family. And I want you to pay attention to what happened on this discussion. Really listen to this discussion. Here we go. Let me rewind it. All right, here we go.
George to destroy the Jewish people. That was his intention. The problem is that people use.
All right, family, listen closely. All right, I know you guys got things going on in the chat, but please listen closely. I accidentally rewinded the video. Let me fast forward a little, but please pay attention. Listen to this exchange. Please listen to this exchange. Let me pause it a second and see if it'll catch up. Let me try it now. To this in a second, family, because when you deal with racism, right? Racism has 5 color groups, right? You have the white, you have the yellow, you have the brown, you have the black, and you also have the red. When you deal with racism, right, and we're just dealing with the institutional race, right? When we deal with the white race, right, Germany, the Europeans, they are listed under the white race. In this country, guess what? And I'm going to show you with a Supreme Court documents, that the Jewish community, as we know them, right, they are classified as the white race, right? So when we deal with racism, this is where we have to be careful of how we throw around that word race, because in the court of law, right, especially in this country, the Jewish community is not looked at as a race, right? Again, the institutional race is 5 color groups, right? There's a difference between race and ethnicity. I want to be clear. And I'm not saying this to try to offend anyone, but that is the facts. And I'm going to give you actual documentation to prove this, because again, we have to be careful how we throw around the word racism. Racism is connected to the institutional race that is an 18th century construct that was created by a man, a German by the name of Johann Blumenbach. He created the institutional race, and it was not built on any scientific equations. So this is why we want to be careful. Don't get sucked into that institutional race. And I'm going to show you with facts. And this is not trying to be offensive to any community. But again, Germany, Hungary or Hungary or whatever, Ukraine, Russia, all those areas, right? Those are considered to be Caucasian, part of the white race. We can't get around that. And I'm going to show you proof that the Jewish community, as we know them in this country, they are referred to when they are classified as being part of the white race. All right, so let's listen to this a little more, and we'll get into some teachings, some additional teachings. And I'm going to show you something to raise a few additional questions. Yeah, family, it's the buffering is acting up here. Let me try it one more time here. Let me see. Let me make sure I close out other things here. All right. Because he makes a great point, and he makes it clear what he's saying, and he pointed out that other rabbis and Jewish educators support what he's saying, which they do. If you look up, you'll see that there are Jews that are against Zionists, right? That you hear them. You could Google it. That you have Jews that are against Zionism, right? Let me close this out here. Let me see if this will help with the buffering, because it's buffering pretty bad now. And let me see here. Just trying to close down some of this stuff here, so that way. All right. If not, we'll move. We'll get into it here. Let me try it now. All right. Let's see. All right. Here we go. So I just wanted to play a little bit of this here. Apologies for not having the clip up, but I just want to play it so that way you can hear their discussion. And what the guy was saying, the guy Greg, what he was saying is that basically, in a nutshell, the Nazis, right, and the Zionists, they were political parties, right? You had the Germans, right? You had all of those people that were born in Germany, right? And the Nazis in is a political party, right? The Zionists, the Nazi, they political party. So, but this is the question that we have to ask, because this is what you would, many of us don't see, because we'll see that they have their symbols on both sides of a coin, right? When you look at the old German coins, you got the swastika on one side, and you have the Zionist symbol, the Star of David, on the other side. So you have the Nazi symbol for the swastika representing the Nazis, and you have the Zionist symbol on the other side of the coin. I mean, why is that? Why do we have two different groups on the other side of the coin? There's a reason why they are referred to as Ashkenazi Jews, right? German Jews, right? Because Ashkenazi means it's interchangeable with German. But the question that we have to ask is, why do we see these two groups, right, with their symbols on the same coin? Why do we see the same symbol on the same coin? The symbol from the Zionists and the symbol from the Nazis? Why do we see the swastika and the Star of David on the same coin? That's the question that we have to ask. Hey, if there's a rabbi that's listening, hey, come on up. I'll drop the link for you to come up and we'll have a discussion. Because unfortunately, everything that is stated, right, from the Jewish community perspective, guess what? It seemed like everything that is stated that may go against, not necessarily speaking in hate, but if you have a disagreement with, you get labeled as anti-Semitism. And that's what that whole discussion I just played for you, that's what they were saying. They were like, hey, just because you disagree with, let's just say, Israel, right? Some of their agenda doesn't make you anti-Semitic. And that's what the whole discussion was about, because that's where things seem to go at. Everything is kind of, far as a lot of things are lumped under anti-Semitic. And if you read Benjamin Friedman, Facts of Facts, he actually talks about that very thing. So again, the person that I had played in there, his name was George Galloway, right? And he was given historical facts about, the different political parties in Germany. But this right here is a question that I'd like to have answered. That's the question I would like to have answered. This is not being anti anyone. And I'm going to deal with Shemitic in a second here. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and fast forward here. Right. I'm not even going to get into the Holocaust. This right here, this article right here, Poland agrees to change Auschwitz tablets. Right. This is where they went from saying that 4 million died in Auschwitz they reduced that number down to like 1.5 million. So they knocked down easily 2.5 million people that was part of that overall 6 million number. So if they knock the numbers down from 4 million people down to 1.5 million, this article right here is telling you that the numbers have to come down in that overall number. And this right here, Poland agrees, the New York Times agrees to change Auschwitz tablets after 50 years of deflecting the request of Jewish groups. Right. So there was Jewish groups that was pushing for the numbers to be reduced. The Polish government has agreed to change the wording on the stone tablets at Auschwitz and Birkenau, the adjacent Nazi camps, where more than 1 million Jews. Right. It went from 4 million to 1 million. Right. That's 3 million right there. So it says here, right, the move follows decades of appeals by Jewish groups who say the current plaques do not fully reflect the suffering of Jews. They're focus too heavily on the camp's non-Jewish victims, right? So when they bring this estimate together, right, they're saying that 1 million Jews, but while thousands of non-Jews were among the estimated 1.5, so we saw 1 million, but we see the numbers at 1.5 million. So it's telling you that there was a lot of non-Jewish Jewish people that was killed. And I want to make this clear. I'm not condoning. I'm not trying to disrespect anyone. For me, anyone that loses their life innocently, regardless of the circumstances, guess what? My heart goes out to that, right? But here I'm just dealing with historical information, and this is the Jews in Poland. They are pushing and stating that those numbers should come down, and they estimated that it's 1 million Jews, right? And again, I'm not saying that whether it was 5 people, 5 Jews, it's still terrible. It's terrible situation. But we see that the number is significantly reduced from 6 million, 4 million rather, in Auschwitz, down to 1 million, right? And this is the proof here. This is the original tablet. It says here 4 million people suffered. And then we see the modification. It says where the Nazis murdered about 1.5 million men, women, and children. And it says mainly Jews. Let me show you again. Mainly men, women, and children, mainly Jews from various countries of Europe. So this is telling you that it wasn't just the Jewish community as we know them that had to deal with this heinous action, this cruelty of Hitler, right? So the estimate is 1 million Jews. So that's a big drop from 4 million to 1 million. All right. From 4 million to 1 million. That is a significant drop. All right. But let's not leave it here. Let's go back to his comment here. So we already agree that, the first portion of Kanye West's statement here is a terrible statement. I can't rock with this right here. But now when we get here, the funny thing is that I actually can't be anti-Semitic because Black people are actually Jews, right? Now, I'm going to use the court system to prove whether or not if Kanye West is telling the truth, right? He says here, the funny thing is that that I actually can't be anti-Semitic because Black people are actually Jews. Now, notice what you see here. He didn't say that the Jewish community, as we know them, the Ashkenazi, he didn't say that they're not Jews. He's just said here this statement that because Black people are actually Jews. So if you read this, he didn't tell them that they're not who they are. He focused on who Blacks are, right? We got to look at it read it for what it is, whether you agree with them or disagree with them, whether you agree with them or not. This is how we have to read his statement. So he didn't say that, the Jewish community as we know them, hey, he didn't say that they're not Jews or they're not Shemitic. He just simply said that Black people are actually Jews, right? But again, the statement that really got him into trouble is this first portion of it, DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. That's not condoned, family. Come on, we got to be real. That is not condoned. He should not have said that. He should not have said that. But this portion right here, the second portion of it, let's see if that's true. Let's see if that holds any weight. All right. Let's see if that holds any weight. So is he correct? Can he be anti-Semitic? Well, let's start with the etymology of Semitism. Notice what it says here. Denoting the language group that includes Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, Assyrian, etc. 1826. Now understand this, family. The word Semitic, right, was pointing or it was considered or was used for a class of languages, right? This is why when you go to the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, you'll see, I believe, Canaanite is listed under Shem in terms of the language, right? Semitic is under because it was initially a language, a group of languages. But of course, when we get around the 17th, to the 18th century, that word Semitic changed its meaning, just like the word Jew changed its meaning. Jew was initially, as it was evolving, right, it was interchangeable for Judah, interchangeable for Judah the tribe, Judah the son of Israel, or Jacob, the southern kingdom, which is referred to as Judah, but it was not used interchangeably or synonymous with all of Israel, because all of Israel cannot be Judah, right? Just like all of Israel cannot be, let's just say, Issachar or Naphtali, right? Not all of Israel could be Levites. It's only a particular groups that are Levites. So again, we see the language group that includes Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, Assyrian. And it goes on to say, in recent, notice what this says, in recent use, often with the specific sense Jewish. So it's saying in the recent sense of this word, how it's being used for those that are Jews. It's being used in the sense of Jewish, synonymous to being Jewish, right? So let's go to another source here, right? This is the Encyclopedia Britannica, right? Antisemitism. It says this: hostility toward or discrimination against Jews as a religious or radical group or racial group, let me say that again: hostility towards or discrimination against Jews as a religious or racial group. The term anti-Semitism was coined in 1879 by the German agitator Wilhelm Marr to designate the anti-Jewish campaigns underway in Central Europe at that time. Right. So we see what 1879, although the term now has wide currency, it is a misnomer since it implies a discrimination against all Semites. But notice what it says here: Arabs and other people are also Semites. Wait a minute. We see Arabs, it says, are also Semites, and it says that Arabs and other people are also Semites, and yet they are not the target of anti-Semitism as it is usually understood. I'm about to add words to it. As it is usually understood. The term is especially inappropriate as a label for the anti-Jewish prejudices, statements, or actions of Arabs or other Semites, right? So this is just giving you more information on it, right? But it goes on to say, had a racial dimension in that it targeted Jews because of their supposed biological characteristics. Now, family, this is where you got to pay attention to the details, right? Because here, the key word that you see here is supposed. Now, let's see what it says. It says, because it says, culminated in the Holocaust, had a racist dimension in that it targeted Jews because of their supposed biological characteristics. Wait a minute. When you see supposed, it didn't say because of their biological characteristics. It says because of their supposed. Supposed, let's see what supposed means. Let's go to the Cambridge Dictionary. Supposedly, it says according to what someone told you, or according to what is believed by many people to be true. So it's saying by when we see that word supposedly, if we go back here, let's go back, right? It says targeted Jews because of their supposedly. In other words, this is what has been said. This is what the majority has been saying. That's what this is saying. Supposed biological characteristics. Supposedly, right? Supposed. Let's go back here. It says supposed biological, right? But it says according to what someone told you, or according to what is believed by many people to be true. So supposedly basically said, it's telling us the common consensus. This is where you get into the word common sense. Doesn't mean just because everyone is saying something that it is true, right? That's why it has supposedly or supposed biological. It could have easily just said, did not have that word included there. So the question is, why did they have it there? Now, this is an interesting quote by Josephus, The Antiquity of the Jews, page 23. This is what he said about the Germans, right? No, not Germans, but the Greeks. It says here, and indeed, Alexander Polyhistor gives his attestation attestation to what I hear say, who speaks thus, Clodemius or Clodemus, the prophet, who is also called Malchus. Now, notice what it says right here. Excuse me if I'm butchering up these names. Who wrote a history of the Jews in agreement with the history of Moses. Their legislator, relatives, that there were many sons born to Abraham by Keturah. Now, family, this is going back to what I was saying about Africa, right? Notice what this says. This is Josephus, the historian that lived during the first century, lived during the time of the Messiah, giving an historical count of the name Africa. This is Josephus, who lived in during the time of Jerusalem being destroyed, being sacked, right? So he recorded what took place, right? But notice what he says here again. Who wrote a history of the Jews in agreement with the history of Moses. Their legislator relates that there were many sons born to Abraham by Keturah, right? And I was thinking a different quote when I said the Greeks. That was different. He also talks about how the Greeks appropriated other cultures unto them as if they were the originators. That's what I was thinking that I had here. But this is dealing with Africa, the name. So it says here, there were many sons born to Abraham by Keturah. That is his wife that he married when Sarah died. Nay, he names three of them: Aphor and Surim and Japhron. That from Surim was the land of Assyria dominated, and that from the other two, Aphor and Japhron, notice what it says here, the country of Africa took its name. Right? So family, this is Josephus giving clarity, saying the word Africa it's a Shemitic word. This is Josephus bearing witness to that. All right. This is Josephus bearing witness to that. All right. So that's what this is saying here. Right. So let's go to the Oxford Dictionary definition of Shemitic. Right. Let's see what it says. It says, relating to or denoting a family of languages that includes Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, and certain ancient languages such as Phoenician, Akkadian, constituting the main subgroup of the Afro-Asiatic family. So guess what? This is key right here. Constituting the main subgroup of the Afro-Asiatic family. So these fall up under the Afro-Asiatic family. But notice what it says here in the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Notice what it says here. Of or relating to or constituting a subfamily of the Afro-Asiatic language, family that includes Hebrew, Aramaic, Arabic, Amharic, which is Ge'ez. The ancient is Ge'ez. Some would say Ga'az, or some pronounce it Giz. That's a whole nother discussion. But these are all Shemitic languages. But entry number two, of related to characteristics of the Semites. But then this new entry that was added within the past 100 to 150 years, now we see the entry Jewish, right? But it still falls up under what? A subfamily of the Afro-Asiatic language. And I'm sharing this with you for a reason, because the question is, like Kanye said, he cannot be anti-Semitic because he is Jew, right? The blacks are Jews. But guess what? As we see here, right, the word Jewish, right, is a subgroup that's underneath Semitic. So how can we all are Afro-Asiatic. We fall up under Afro-Asiatic. That's a fact. We fall up under Afro-Asiatic. But how come we can be accused as anti-Semitic? How can an Afro-Asiatic person be anti himself? I'm going somewhere with this because we see here the Jewish community, right, falls up under, when we look at that word Semitic, that word Jewish falls up under the Afro-Asiatic it's a subfamily. Let me say it again, of or relating to, constituting a subfamily of the Afro-Asiatic languages, language family that includes Hebrew, Aramaic, Arabic, Amharic, of or related to characteristics of Semites, Jewish. Let's go to the Webster's dictionary definition of Semite. Let's see what it says here. Notice what it says. Right now, it goes from being languages. Now it goes to actually being people. Semitic now to Semite. It says a member of any a number of peoples of ancient southwestern Asia, including the Akkadians, Phoenicians, Hebrews, and Arabs, right? But then it goes on to say a descendant of these people, a member of a modern people speaking a Semitic language. That this sub entry, right? This is a newer entry. It says a member of a modern people speaking a Semitic language. Now it's saying here that if you speak what is deemed to be a Semitic language, then you are considered to be a Semite, right? You're considered to be a Semite. So what is anti-Semitism? What is anti-Semitism, family? Let's break this down. I'm going to put a couple of quotes up here, and you guys can tell me if it's anti-Semitic, right? It says here, the Jews I find are very selfish, very, very selfish. They care not how many murdered or mistreated as long as the Jews get special treatment. Now, according to that definition of Semitic, right, anti-Semitism, is this an anti-Semitic statement? If you believe that it's based upon the definition, like, family, let's be honest, let your bias opinions, put those aside. According to what we hear today, according to how the media is defining anti-Semitism, how the Jewish community as we know them define anti-Semitism, type 1 if this is considered to be anti-Semitism, type 1. Based upon what they've established, the baseline, type 1. All right, only one person answered the question. Stacey Pullen put 1. She put President Wilson. All right. Terrence Grant. Yep, today. William Smithers, today. And today, right? So far, we're in agreement here, right? Let's see here. Yaquaba, 1. Lamont Wright, 1. Right? Stacia, 1. Tahuti, 1. So far it looks like everyone is coming in, most with the exception of Jay Highstyle. He said depends on who is coming from. Pretty much everyone, the majority of the consensus here, it says yeah. Right? Let me put another statement up here. Yet when they, in other words, the Jews, have power, physical, financial, or political, neither Hitler nor Stalin has anything on them for cruelty. Let me read it again. Yet when the Jews have power, physical, financial, or political, neither Hitler nor Stalin has anything on them for cruelty. Now, would this be considered anti-Semitic? Type 1 if you say yes, type 2 no. Because we see a statement here saying that basically saying that the Jews, right, are worse than Hitler, worse than Stalin. Would this considered to be anti-Semitic based upon how it's established today? Be honest, family. All right, let's see here. B. Isaiah 2, Joy 2, Stacey Pullen 1, Terrence Jackson 2. All right. Let's see here. Locks of Judah 2, Tehuti 1. So most of you guys are saying it's not considered, right? Truth be told, it would be. If we be honest with it, this will be considered an anti-Semitic statement, because in the discussion that I played with the two Caucasians, right, they were dealing with Hitler, and they were saying, and one of the guys was saying how was dealing with the political party of the Nazis versus the political party of the Zionists, and it caused a major stir. So, even though most of you guys said no, but we have to be real with it. We have to be real with it. This will be considered an anti-Semitic statement of today, right? This will be considered an anti-Semitic statement of today. But guess what? Let me show you who made this statement. According to the evolving definition, right? President Harry Truman of today, right? If he was living today, would be considered anti-Semitic. Why? Because Harry Truman made this comment. This is in his diary in 1947. This is his diary, right? This is his diary. The Jews, I find, are very, very selfish. They care not how many Estonians, Latvians, Finns, Poles, Yugoslavs, or Greeks get murdered or mistreated as displaced persons, as long as the Jews get special treatment. He goes on to say, this is President Truman, the former president. Yet when they have power, physical, financial, or political, neither Hitler or Stalin has anything on them for cruelty or mistreatment to the underdog. Put an underdog on top, and it makes no difference whether his name is Russian, Jewish. And he goes on even further. He didn't stop there. He says, Russian, Jewish, Negro, management, labor, Mormon, Baptist. He goes haywire. I found very, very few who remember their past condition when prosperity comes. So he's President Truman. This is his library. I don't know if it's still there. I save my links. I save my screen prints, so that way when I'm sharing these sources, whether it's changes or not, you guys can see this. You can see it for yourself. So again, if Truman or if someone of today made comments like this, they will be considered anti-Semitic. We can't get around it, no matter how we slice and dice it, right? What is a Jew? The online etymology dictionary definition of the word. This is what really caught my attention. One of the Jewish race or religion. And for me is, wait a minute, when did the Jewish community become a race, right? When did they become a race? Because this is why I say it's imperative to get you a physical copy. At least I got multiple, but at least one etymology dictionary, right? Do I have mine sitting in here? All right, let me see here. Let me pull it out real quick. All right, family, now let me show you this, right? Because I know I didn't want to show my face because I am tired. I am drained from this weekend, but let me show you this book here, right? Let me show my camera. All right, let me share my camera. All right, so this is the book that I'm referring to, right? Dictionary of Etymology, right? And I'm going to show you what it says for the word Jew. You're not going to see one of the Jewish races. See, this is why you have to have sources. You better purchase some of those books, man. Let's not be so dependent on the internet, because it's subjected to change. And we see here on this, when I maximize this again, it says one of the Jewish race or religion. And the question is, when did the Jewish race become a religion? I mean, become a race? But let me show you what it says in this book, right? This is the Bernhardt Etymology Dictionary, right? Let me show you what it says, right? Now, again, let me put it back up on the screen so that way you guys understand the Bernhardt, right, Etymology Dictionary. This is it right here, right? So that way, let me put it up so no one can say I'm making this up, right? That's it right there, the Bernhardt Concise Dictionary of Etymology, right? The origins of American English words. So no one can say that I'm not showing sources, because again, I'm not attacking people. I'm just dealing with doctrine. We're dealing with history. I'm not going at any people, particular people. I just want to make that clear. I'm dealing with doctrine. I'm dealing with history. So if anyone have a problem, hey, take it up with the sources. All right. But let's go here. Let's go back here. Let's go here. It says here, probably before the 12th century. But notice what it says here, borrowed through Anglo-French, right? Judah, you see Hebrew Yehudi from Yehudah, right? Judah, name of the fourth son of Jacob, right? So you don't see the word race there. You don't see the word race. When was this book published, right? Let me pull it up here again. Let's see here. When was this book published, right? Because what changed, right? What caused it to change? This book was published in 1988. So from the time of 1988, right, to the etymology dictionary online, we see a change in this definition because they added race to this definition. All right. So when did the Jewish community become a race? What is race? Now that I mentioned that, right, is a Jew or Jewish a race? Right? Now, this is another source, and I'm going to drop this source inside the comment section because, again, I'm giving you sources, family. I'm going to show you what this Jewish publication is say about the Jewish community as we know them, especially they are dealing with the Ashkenazi Jewish community, dealing with DNA, right? Because, many people within the church, all right, they want to say have a lot to say about us, right? Using DNA. Let me do something here. Something is not working here. Let me switch it up here. Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to drop this link in the comment section. All right, there we go. All right, here we go. That's the link that I'm getting ready to make a reference to. Now, notice what it says here. All right. Notice what this says here. This is coming from the Forward. The Forward is a Jewish publication. They've been around for almost 150 years, since I believe 18. Is it 18? Yes, like 1888, something like that. Between the 1880s, 1870s, 1880s. They've been around for almost 150 years, family, right? The Forward. This is a Jewish publication. I didn't put the history of this platform, this news outlet. Just tried to shrink down this presentation for you, but this is from the Forward. It says Forward. The title of this article: Can 23andMe tell us if Jews are a race, and is that a good thing? Right, and this was published back in July 30th, 2017. So let's see what it says. It says, can 23andMe tell us if Jews are a race, and is that a good thing? Notice what this says here. Learning your genetics makeup has never been easier than it is in 2017. For less than the cost of a doctor's visit, some people are trying to use this service to find out if or to what extent they are Jewish, a phenomenon that worries historians and scientists. Why is it worrying historians? Why is it worrying scientists? Well, this is going to tell you why. Buyers of mail-order gene testing kits do get solid information from them. They learn where their ancestors were living 9 generations ago. Some have even found living but long lost family members. The danger, expert says, is that in relying on these kits to learn more about their genes, users are perpetuating the notion that Jews are a race. Wait a minute. In the encyclopedia, right, the etymology definition of Jew, it lists them as being a race. But here we see the Jewish publication saying that the dangers of people, far as Jews getting these DNA tests, is that users are perpetuating the notion that Jews are a race. So their concern in this publication that protects the Jewish community, saying that many are using this, the DNA testing to push that the Jewish community is a race. And notice what it says, a concept they say has no scientific basis. So it's making it clear that many of the users now are trying to use their DNA test to say that they are what? A race. The Jewish people are a race. And again, a concept they say has no scientific basis. Now, make a note of that. That last saying right here, this last portion, a concept they say has no scientific basis, because you're going to hear this in the Institution of Race when I share this next source. Users are perpetuated the notion that Jews are a race, a concept that they say has no scientific basis. Is this true? This quote true? Is it true? Well, I'm going to show you that it is true what they posted there, because this is coming from the Anthropology newsletter, The Origins of the Idea of Race by R.G. Smedley, November 1997. Notice what it says here. Contemporary scholars agree that race, notice what it says here, was a recent invention, and that it was essentially a folk idea, not a scientific or not a product of scientific research and discovery. This is not new to anthropologists. So guess what? Race is not an old construct. It is a recent invention. That means somebody has a patent on it. Race, the concerns of that article I read is that many that they believe that many from within the Jewish community is going to use their DNA test to push the notion that being Jewish is a race. Where it says here, race, as that article says, is based off of no scientific research or study. So race is an invention, and that it was essentially a folk idea, not a product of scientific research and discovery. This is not new to anthropologists, right? Right? So going back to this article, notice what it says. The idea of race has historically slotted humans into a handful of categories: Asian, African, white, etc. But research has shown that there can be as much genetic difference within these races as between them. Wait a minute. So this is what this is actually saying. Just because you are classified as being black, guess what? Doesn't mean that all of us are going to share the exact same DNA markers, because black is just a social construct. You could be from a different tribe. Your DNA can be totally the opposite. Why? Because again, it's all about tribes. It's all about tribes. That's how we see it in the scriptures. Tribes, not race. So guess what? What race has done is lumped everyone into these groups. That's what this article is saying. That guess what? It says here, but research has shown that there can be as much genetic differences within these races as between them. And experts say the notion that one's skin tone and facial features alone can predict social behavior is plain wrong. Right? Notice what it goes on to say. It is really important for all of us to resist the attempt to revive this discredited notion that race is a biological category rather than a political and social category, said Marcy Darnowski, director of the Center for Genetics in Society, a nonprofit scientific ethics group. Right? I'm not going to get into those right there. I just don't want to get into that. Right? So it says, resist the attempt to revive this discredited notion that race is a biological category. So now when we continue on here, notice what this says here. Iberian and Greek populations, but let's focus on here. Ashkenazic Jews often find themselves in the peculiar situation of being 90% Ashkenazi Jewish and 99% European. NASA, we got a problem here. Come on, family. It says the Jewish community, the Ashkenazi Jewish community, as we know them, this is the forward, says that 99% of them, right? 90%, right, of their DNA will come up saying that they're Ashkenazi Jewish, but overall, they are 99% European. Wait a minute. NASA, we got a problem. NASA, we got a problem. Because here we see that the Ashkenazi Jewish community, as we know them, they are 99% European. Wait a minute, let me say it one more time. I hope you guys grab hold of this. And again, I'm making this clear. This is not trying to disrespect anyone, but when we're dealing with science, when we're dealing with DNA, when we're dealing with this Jewish publication, because this is not my publication, this is the Forward. They make it clear saying that the Jewish community is 99% European. It says Sephardic Jews may be told that they are mostly Middle Eastern and North African and less than 10% Ashkenazic. So it's saying the Sephardic, right, Jews have less than 10% German blood in them, but it says that the Ashkenazis, the German Jews, right, they are 99% European. So they have 1% or less that's directed or pointed towards the Middle East.
What?
Family, that's why it's good to stay on topic. It's good to use sources instead of just opinions. Kanye West used opinions. What's his name? Nick Cannon used opinions, but they don't show sources. See, when you show sources, at least you can rely on the sources. If they say something is wrong with the sources, at least they can say you're quoting sources, whether you're quoting it correctly or misquoting it, or they want to attack the sources. But then this removes that accusation of you trying to what? Go in and be ugly or be spewing hate towards any communities. I'm giving nothing but sources. We're not spewing hatred here. We just going off the sources. I'm using a Jewish publication that I'm asking the question, why is it that we see this here? I don't have a problem with sitting down and talking to someone from the Jewish community, as we know, the Ashkenazi Jewish community. If anyone want to reach out to me, reach out to me. My email is right at the bottom of the screen, right? If this publication, the Forward, want to reach out to me, reach out. But this is coming from the Forward, which is a Jewish publication. We cannot get around it. It says that again, that 90%, right? It says here 90% Ashkenazi Jewish and 99% European. So it's saying that the Ashkenazi Jews, as we know them, they are 99% European. Sephardic Jews may be told they are mostly Middle Eastern and North African and less than 10% Ashkenazic. So that means that when you see that 99% European, that means converted, right? Converted over by way of religion, became Jews by way of conversion, which that is the law of return, right? But anyway, it says Stuart Schaufman, a traveler writer and blogger who writes under the name, I'm not going to repeat that, said he brought a kit 23andMe because even though his family insists they're exclusively Jewish, he thought there was a possibility that he had some non-Jewish ancestry. I was curious because you never know, says Schaufman. Family stories are just stories. Schaufman, who learned that he is 99.8 Ashkenazi Jewish. He learned that he's 99.8. So that means that he's basically 100% European. Said the test hasn't made much of a difference. So regardless of him being 99.8% Ashkenazi, 99.8% European, he said it doesn't make a difference on his sense of Jewish identity. He goes on to say Judaism really informed who I am. He says because of Judaism, the religion is why he and how he identifies of being a Jew. He says Judaism informed who I am and my values and my worldview, Schaufman said. 23andMe hasn't made me more or less Jewy at all. I'm just Jewy. Now, guess what? Right? Some of you guys that did the 23andMe, your DNA, you know, if you see Nigeria there, more than likely it's going to be between 30 to 40%. The Igbos, right? Nigerian Igbo, right? Guess what? the Igbo's been confirmed to being blood descendants of Israel. So your DNA, just on that alone, regardless of the percentage, if it's 30%, if it's 10%, it's much higher than 1%. So that means that you are blood descendants. You have a high percentage that connects you directly to Northeast Africa, which is Israel. So again, in my DNA from 23andMe, it shows that mine is almost 40%, almost 40%. Nigeria, and it has Igbo listed there, right? So again, and that, you know, it brings up more discussions, but I want to make sure that you understand sources. Let's continue. Schofman added, he's Jewy and white. So he says this person who DNA revealed that he's 99% European, 99% Ashkenazi, but he said it doesn't matter. He's Jewy and white, while other Jews, Sephardic Ethiopian Jews, can't claim that distinction. He's saying that, wait a minute, the Sephardic Jews, the Ethiopians, and others can't make that claim of being 99% European. Not just being European, being Jewy and white. Now, notice what it says here. He's an ethnic minority, but a white one nonetheless. But this is the kicker. I get all the benefits of white privilege, he acknowledged. So wait a minute. So he gets the best of both worlds. He gets to claim to be Afro-Asiatic by way of being Shemitic, right? Because remember, Semitic is a subgroup under the Afro-Asiatics, but then also he gets white privilege from being part of the white race. So get the best of both worlds. That's what he's saying here. That's what he's saying in this passage, or should not passage, but in this paragraph, this source that I shared, that he get to get both the best of both worlds. Shemitic, being Afro-Asiatic, but then also claiming to be the privileges of white. Notice what it says here. I get all the benefits of white privilege, he acknowledged. But family, so again, going back here, the term race, this is the institution of race, the power of race, which says origins of the idea of race, the power of an illusion, R.G. Smetley. The term race, which had been a classificatory term like type or kind, but with ambiguous meaning, became more widely used in the 18th century and crystallized into a distinct reference for Africans, right? By focusing on the physical and status differences between the conquered and enslaved people and Europeans, the emerging ideology linked the socio-political status and physical traits together and created a new form of social identity. Come on, family. This is why we've been programmed to focus on saying we're Black people versus focusing on where we originated from. What is our ethnicity? We're more than just as Kanye West pointed out, we're more than just a color descriptor, right? That's what I gave when I did the Black Lives Matter message. If you guys go back and look at it, I went in on this like 7 years ago. 7 years ago. Hard to believe it's been that long. This is the icebreaker I gave.
And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese. China. Russian. Russia. Italian. Italy. German. Germany. Swedish. Sweden. Korean. Egyptian, Egypt. Nigerian, Nigeria. Black.
Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
This is why we have so much confusion. Just what you saw in that crowd, right? Just that icebreaker I gave to that crowd and the confusion. Black doesn't associate with anything. It's just a color descriptor. It's a category, a social construct. to make sure that there's a separation between the conquered and enslaved and the Europeans, to remind us that we are on the lowest part of the totem pole. And every government that's based off of the institution of race, guess what? Where do we fall at? We fall at the lowest point, the lowest part of that totem pole. We deal with the same issues right across the world, right around the world. Guess what? You think that we were dealing with the only problems here? Guess what? Our brothers and sisters over in Europe was dealing with the same stuff. Our brothers and sisters in France, man, France has all kinds of racism going on over there. You'd be surprised what our people are dealing with over there. Every country that deals with or have the institution of race embedded in their governmental system. All right. So created a new form of social identity for those that try to tell you that identity doesn't matter. Well, guess what? Every time you say that you're white, black, brown, whatever, you are saying that that is your social identity. Right. So does the judicial system recognize the Jewish community as a race? Right. They do not recognize the Jewish community as a race. What is a Jew? Right. That's a duplicate slide. So let me fast forward here. Right. Now I want to highlight a couple of incidents here, and I want to make it clear. I'm not here saying this to be insensitive to those that have lost loved ones. I just want to show a point here. As a matter of fact, I'm not even going to show this because I don't want to give any room for anyone taking what I'm saying out of context. So I'm just going to fast forward right to here. Right. And I may deal with the hate crimes, go back and deal with the hate crimes. But right now, let's go right to the Supreme Court. Right. Because the day and time we're living in right now, people can take things and try to take things all out of context. And I don't want anyone to take my words out of context and try to use that to try to say, hey, I'm promoting hatred. No, I don't want to do that. But let's go to this particular case here. Supreme Court case, Sharia Tefillah congregation versus Cobbs, right? So this is a Jewish congregation, a synagogue, going against this person Cobbs, right? This is the Cobbs is the defendant, right? Now notice what it says here, right? This is the Supreme Court, right? This is giving us the full details on this particular case, all right? As we see the case syllabus case, we see it right here, gives you the number and everything that you could go to. And I'm going to drop this link inside the chat so that way you guys can go to it and you can read it yourself and you will see what I'm getting ready to share with you. Here we go. All right, let me put that here. All right. Now, after their synagogue was painted with anti-Semitic slogans, phrases, and symbols, petitioners brought suit in federal district court alleging that the desecration by respondents violated 42, and it's just giving you the code and everything, the statute rather. The district court dismissed petitioner's claim, and the Court of Appeals affirmed, holding that discrimination against Jews is not racial discrimination under this particular statute. Wait a minute, holding that discrimination against Jews is not racial discrimination. So in this case, right, Cobbs was a Caucasian, a white guy, and was told and was in the Supreme Court ruling said that he was not racist against the Jews, and that brought these charges against him. Well, let's go into it more. Let's see exactly what it says. It says a charge of racial discrimination within the meaning of statute 1982 cannot be made by alleging only that the defendant were motivated by racial animus. It is also necessary to allege that the animus was directed toward the kind of group that Congress intended to protect when it passed the statute. And here's the statute right here, P 48 US 617. Jews can state a 1982 claim of racial discrimination, since they were among the people considered to be distinct races, and hence within the protection of the statute at the time it was passed. But notice what happens here. They are not foreclosed from stating a cause of action simply because the defendant are also part of what today is considered the Caucasian race. Wait a minute, it's saying that in a nutshell, the Jewish community, this synagogue could not sue this person Cobbs because both of them are from the same race. They both are Caucasians. They both are white. And what it's saying is that a white person cannot sue another white person for racial, right? For rape, for being a racist. Come on, family. We got to be real here. We got to be real here. This is the Supreme Court. A white person cannot sue another white person for racism. A black person cannot sue another black person for racism, according to the institution of race.
What?
Come on, family. I'm giving you sources, straight sources, but I'm not going to stop there. It says race, and it gives you another court case to look at that it used it as its source, as its reference, right? But notice what it says here: reverse and remanded. All right. So the judge gave some additional information, reverse and remanded. Notice what he says here, right? Justice White delivered the opinion of the court. We agree with petitioners, however, that the Court of Appeals erred in holding that Jews cannot state a claim. So what they're saying here is that they're making it clear that the Jews, right, they can state a claim, right, against other white defendants. But here is the catch. It says Court of Appeals erred in holding that Jews cannot state a statute claim based on the statute, a 1982 claim, the statute claim against other white defendants. That view rested on the notion that because Jews today are not thought to be members of a separate race. Wait a minute. The Jews today are not thought to be members of a separate race. Can I say this in slow motion? Let me say this in slow motion for those that are not allowing this to really register. The view rested on the notion that because Jews today are not thought to be members of a separate race. For the people in the back. For the people in the back. For the people in the back.
What?
The Jews today are not thought to be members of a separate race. So we have to get rid of a lot of the poor teachings, and we have to toss out a lot of the poor teachings that we were subjected to. They cannot make out a claim of racial discrimination. Oh, wait a minute. So this source is saying that they cannot make out a racial discrimination towards someone else that are in the same race. So if two people are within the same race, they cannot make a racial claim against one another, but they can still file claims of hate, but they can't be based on racism, right? So it says within the meaning, and it gives the statute, that construction of the section we have today, right? Rejected in this particular court case. Our opinion in that case observed that definition of race when the statute was passed were not the same as they are today. It goes on to say, intended to protect from discrimination identifiable classes of persons who are subjected to intentional discrimination solely because of their ancestry or ethnic can't even say it, ethnic characteristics. All right. So again, it goes on to say the question before us is not whether Jews are considered to be a separate race by today's standards, but whether at the time the statute was adopted, Jews constituted a group of people that Congress intended to protect. It is evident from legislative history of the section, and it gives the case that it was referring to. But it says a review that we need not repeat it here. The Jews and Arabs were among the peoples then considered at that time. So to be distinct races and hence within the protection of the statute. But notice what it says. Jews are not foreclosed from stating a cause of action against other members of what is considered to be part of the Caucasian race. So guess what? It is saying that the Jews, right, they can bring a case, but it's not racism. They can bring a case, but it's not racism. It can be hatred, because when you vandalize somebody's place of worship, now you're getting into the hate crimes. And let me bring up the hate crimes. I'm not getting into the other stuff, but let me bring up the hate crime laws here. Let me bring up the hate crime laws. Do I have it here? I think I do. Let's see here. Right? Since 1968, when Congress passed and President Lyndon B. Johnson signed into law the first federal hate crimes statute, the Department of Justice has been enforcing federal hate crime laws. The 1968 statute made it a crime to use or threaten to use force to willfully interfere with any person because of race, color, religion, or national origin. So guess what? Whites cannot sue each other for white. They cannot sue each other for color, but they can sue because of religion, right? Or even national origin. And because the person is participating in a federally protective activity, such as public education, employment, jury service, travel, or the enjoyment of public accommodations, because this was also established because of the things that was happening with housing, how we were being discriminated with purchasing homes. That's when you get into the red districting and all that other stuff, the redlining and all of that. So, or helping another person to do so. In 1968, Congress also made it a crime to use or threaten to use or force to interfere with housing rights because of the victim's race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. In 1988, protection on the basis of familial status, status and disability were added. In 1996, Congress passed the Church Arson Prevention Act, right? So now this is dealing with those, for example, like the synagogue, the case about the synagogue that I pointed out being vandalized. Now they can file a hate crime charges against anyone of the same race that vandalized their assembly. That's why I said, family, just like these so-called people popping up at our place of worship, guess what? They're falling right up in the lines of hate crime laws. Why? Because they popped up. One of them call themselves popping up, traveling across the country, popping up at our doorstep, and began to slander my education, began to slander and put defaming my reputation on stuff that they've made up, trying to state that it's true. A bunch of lies that is not substantiated. So they came over to my place of worship, and then one of them had the nerve to call me a coward for that person showing up to our place of worship while no one was there. And because I filed a privacy complaint against them through YouTube, they called me a coward. Well, guess what? They are falling right up under this hate crime. Why? Because they claimed they came to our place of worship with the whole purpose of defaming me and wanting to force me into a discussion. So they began to harass me. That is part of harassment that these guys have no clue. This is what happens when you start getting into those that get up under that white privilege, because this person came all the way to our place of worship on this notion, trying to box our assembly in with this term Hebrew Israelism, and they can't even define it, what Hebraism, let's just start with that word, what it really is. But they came to our place of worship, right? But notice what it says here. It says, under this act, it is a crime to damage, or destroy real property, or interfere with a person's religious practice. That person interfering with our religious practice and situations affecting interstate commerce. The acts also bar defacing, damaging, or destroying religious property because of race, color, or ethnicity. Because guess what? These people have a problem with me being a Hebrew Israelite, with them, with you guys being a Hebrew Israelite, being the descendant of the ancient Hebrews, even though I made it clear that my heritage, my family traditions, even the church down in Savannah confirms it, and DNA confirms what's always been handed down in my family. Want to tell me what I am and what I am not, and because you cannot debunk or prove me wrong, you want to slander my reputation? Well, guess what? We'll let the legal system handle it now. No, don't need to deal with YouTube. We'll let the legal system handle it. And this is where we got to start doing this, family. We got to start doing the very same thing. We have to start using the legal system to go at these people, because they are violating our constitutional right to practice what we practice and believe what we believe and assemble ourselves. But let's continue on with this here. In 2009, the hate crime laws were expanded. Let's see how they expanded it. It says in 2009, Congress passed and President Obama signed the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, expanding the federal definition of hate crimes, enhancing the legal toolkit available to prosecutors, and increasing the ability of federal law enforcement to support our state and local partners. Notice what it says here. This law removed the then existing jurisdictional obstacles to prosecutors of certain race and religion motivated violence, and added new federal protection against crime based on gender, disability, gender identity, or sexual orientation. Let me pull this up here because it's even more, because I meant to update the slide. Let me put it in. Let me pull up the hate crimes law, because I want to highlight another part that's there that points to here what I'm talking about. Matter of fact, I look like I see my cousin Benea in the chat. I'll drop the link there if you want to jump on, cuz. Or matter of fact, I see Jay Highstyle and some of you guys there. If you guys want to jump on, feel free to do so. But I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Let me see here. First, I'm gonna drop the invite in the chat. If you want to jump on, I'm getting ready to wrap this up. But I just want to pull up this the hate crime law, so you can see the portion that these guys are really crossing the line, right? And I don't care about sharing this. And if they have something to say, guess what? They better really be careful of their word selection, because I'm not playing. I gave them a number of warnings, and these guys continue to throw it back in my face. Right. And even made videos about, hey, the Hebrew Israelites always talking about legal actions. Well, let me show you something here for those that think that this is a joke. Let me show you something, family. Let me stop the screen share. Let me pull up this other screen. Where is it? There it is. Here we go. All right. Let me scroll down here, right? I want y'all to make sure y'all see this. Now, I want y'all to pay attention to this, right? If you can see this, type 1, right? I want y'all to pay attention to this, right? This is why I'm not playing, family. I tried to, take the high road. Actually, I'm still taking the high road. Me and my cousin and others have taken the high road, and people want to still slander, make up stuff, with no proof, right? No proof. Saying that we made up people and all this other stuff based off of a bunch of lies, right? So I want to read this portion. I'm gonna read this portion real quick. Got my cousin here. I'm gonna read this portion, family, to you guys. And I want you to understand what it says for the hate crimes. And because I'll bring you in right after I read this last little portion, okay?
Oh, peace and blessings. I can hear you, cuz. Peace and blessings. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna read this real quick. All right. So you see on your screen, conspiracy against rights, right? So me, my cousins, Benea, and guess what? Many of you, they are building up conspiracies and coming up with tactics, coming up with agendas that violates our rights. This statute makes it unlawful for 2 or more persons to conspire to injure, threaten, but here's the kicker, or intimidate a person in any state. So guess what? Some people decided to cross the country lines and show up at our assembly, and the whole purpose, as that person posted in their YouTube community, called me a coward because I reported them to YouTube, and then said, hey, be a man, question me, my manhood, being a man, question my gender, you know what I mean? And try to bully me, intimidate me into having a discussion with them. You're not going to slap me in my face. You're not going to spit in my face and then expect me to have a discussion with you. This is the problem from the very beginning. So again, look at what it says, family. This statute makes it unlawful for 2 or more persons to conspire to injure, conspire to threaten, but here's the kicker, or intimidate a person in any state, territory, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or the laws of the U.S. And when you're crossing state lines, it goes from being a state issue to being a federal issue. So with that being said, got my cousin Benea here. Come on, Benea, let me bring you on in. I know I gave a mouthful. I know we're dealing with the Jewish community with the Kanye situation, but I did want to tie this in to some of the things that we just got to say enough is enough. I mean, here it is. Kanye did something and said something that offended their community. They got him disabled. We can't even do that. We scared to do that as a community. It's only a few people that's willing to do it, but the whole community most of the community as a whole don't even want to go near stuff like this, man. We got to say enough is enough. They have it, cuz. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to land back on what you were saying, because I think the problem is, though, cuz, this is just my opinion, but I think if they had the facts, like if Kanye had all these facts that are coming out nowadays about, us proving who we are, beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? If he had that, then he could stand on what he said. But the problem is that when the Kanyes and the Nick Cannons come out and they start making these facts or making these statements, and they don't have the receipts to back it up, that's when they get in trouble, and that's when they're forced to backtrack, and that's when they get this trying to think of a careful word of this person, of the other persuasion that gets assigned to them to help educate them in their version of history. That kind of like how Nick Cannon came out with how he had to backtrack and how he had to kind of buddy up, so to speak, with Ashkenazi to re-educate them. Throwing up my air quotes.
You're absolutely right, though, because they didn't show any sources. That's the problem.
No.
They didn't, in their discussion, they didn't say, "Hey, let me pull up this source here, and let's let the source speak for itself, and let's talk about it."
Yep.
And they could have confirmed everything that they said with sources. Only thing to me that Kanye went out there with is when he said that he's going to go DEFCON 3 on their community. It's like you can't say stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's too
far. That's too far. But Jay Highstyle, peace and blessings, my brother.
Peace and blessings,
Anything
brother.
that you want to share?
Peace and blessing, Pastor, and also Brother Benaya. Pastor, you got to help me out with something here. Where does the term anti-Semitic come from? Because really that doesn't match up with us being Shemitic. So I'm wondering, where does that term come from?
Well, that term was used initially to protect the Jewish community as we know it.
That's what I figured.
Yeah. And
So
when you start looking at that word, it's like, wait a minute, but when you look at the word Shemitic, well, it's like they're not the only Shemitic people. That's why it's like a lot of the laws here had to include Arabs, but then they normally, when you see a lot of the legal laws, you'll see Jews, Arabs, and others.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it was started for targeting specifically the Jewish community, political.
And that's what I was figuring. I'm sure you've seen my comments in the chat when I threw up a question mark when you had a question, is this anti-Semitic or not? Because really, I think that term is just a play on semantics more than anything. And it's really to fit their agenda. It's not necessarily to say that they're actually of a Jewish or a Jew line per se, or Israel. They have an Israel identity. It's more to continue to confound us from being that true nation of Israel, more than anything. Because it seems like that term anti-Semitic is actually a derivative of anti-Shemitic, if you ask me. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pastor.
Yes.
But it seems like it's a derivative of it. So it's really there to confound us from, and not just us, but the world, from pointing at who true Israel really is. And, that article you brought up about the DNA and everything, also mentioned that they didn't say anything about the Kohen gene. They mentioned everything else but that. And that is one of the primary ways in which the Jewish community is looking to, how can I say, pinpoint those, or validate. Thank you, Brother Benaya. Validate those that are truly a Jew, if there is a such thing, So I really think it's a play on words, and it's a matter of semantics more than anything.
Yeah, it's interesting because that word anti-Semitic, that's a new word. It's a new term.
Right.
And it's funny because they've tried to extend it over the years to include black. They'll say things like, "Oh yeah, if you're saying that the Jews are black, you're anti-Semitic," But that's not. I mean, of course, we have all these references and stuff. Of course, I tell people, from 1850 and older that talk about, the Jews being black. And oddly enough, this is when you start to see this term of anti-Semitic come up, like right in that changing period. I call it the switcheroo, because people always wonder, like, how can you go from, all these books talking about them being black to, these new books talking about them being white. And it's right around that time you start seeing things like this word start, creeping up. Anti-Semitic, that's trying to validate, to your point, validate who they are. And just one additional point, Pastor Kelly, you brought out that, the article, that article that talks about, them being, these Ashkenazi Jews being Europeans as well. man, there's so many layers to this, and this is, praise Most High. We'll dive into this in some upcoming videos and documentaries and stuff like that, because when you look at the history of Europe, the history of Europe, you have to kind of zero in on like the Germany. Like Germany is like the ground zero for like all this stuff. In my opinion, Germany, you have the Holy Roman Empire is right there. If you ever look at maps of the Holy Roman Empire, is right smack dab over Germany, right? And this is where the Ashkenazi Jews are. And shout out to Sister Joy in the chat, because she was dropping some bombs too, as far as the origin of these people. And just to kind of keep, I know we're talking about a sensitive subject, because I won't say anything to get your channel in trouble, but just to kind of stick to the facts and stick to references and provable facts, right? It's provable. It's a provable fact of who they are and where they came from. Multiple levels. There's DNA, right? There's a marker that most geneticists will tell you that when we look at the phenotype of Europeans, when most people think about Europeans, they're thinking about white people, right? White, light skin. Well, there's a gene out there called SLC 24. Let me see, I'm going off the top of my dome here. SLC 24A5, and that's the genetic mutation that's associated with the skin pigmentation changes within Europeans. That is tied to the same people that brought white skin into the European area, but it's also tied into the Ashkenazi Jews themselves. Like they were one of the carriers of these genes. And this is one of those provable facts that Most High willing, we will bring this out. I've got a video out coming out called Black Germany that will kind of dive into this. And all we're going to do is going to go after fact to the fact to the fact to the fact. We're just going to read a whole bunch of references and documents to prove this out. But it's a provable fact when you look at the genes, when you look at the language, the Indo-Germanic language of where it came from, that also ties to the Ashkenazi Jews, also ties to the Caucasus Mountain. Like all this stuff goes back to the same region, and it's undeniable of who they are.
And I want to just add to what Brother Benaiah is saying. He doesn't want to be daring, but I'm gonna be a little daring. And I'm gonna just say this: that coin that you showed us, Pastor, it speaks volumes. It really shows that the two that are in question, they actually come from the same lineage, which is a Germanic lineage. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Benaiah, because you're the historian here. But I think it truly connects the two together, and where they have a common ground of where they come from.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what Whoopi. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, because
that's what Whoopi Goldberg stated. But because of, again, you're looking at two different courts. You have the legal courts, but then you have court of opinion, right? Court of opinion, people are going to give their verdicts, and you're guilty of anti-Semitism without ever going to court, right? I literally pulled up the court cases of people that was accused of anti-Semitism. For example, the guy that broke into that Jewish home, and I think he hacked a few people with his machete.
Right.
And when I looked up the federal case, I have it here in this presentation. He was not charged with anti-Semitism. Right. And I went through a number of cases where they said that they were going to charge this person with anti-Semitism. Guess what? I went to the federal case, the federal charges, not a single charge of anti-Semitism. One charge was saying that the prosecutor, grandstanding by way of their what they call it, when they're giving their announcements and everything. I forgot what they call it, but they are talking to the reporters and all, and they grandstanding, saying, "Hey, they're going to throw every punishable law under the book at the person, from racism to this to that to this and that." And I was like, okay, let me go look up. And I made a note, say, hey, let me go to the federal government website and see what charges were filed, and none what that person said that they were going to charge the person with when it came to what they did with that Jewish synagogue, they did not charge him with the charges that they said that they were going to charge him with.
Yeah. So when I kind of think that when the problem, like with Kanye, like you said, he, you know, when he made that other statement, you know, he went too far.
Yeah.
But I think, let's say, for instance, if he didn't say that statement, the problem is, and this is what I said, I think this is a problem for the Germanic Ashkenazi Jews, and this is their problem, is that right now they're in the mindset of anytime a black man stands up and says that, you know, the Israelites, Israel, the real Israel's black, they have a problem with that, and their knee-jerk reaction is to call that anti-Semitism. Like that was the whole thing with, you know, I was talking about Nick Cannon. When Nick Cannon said, you know, hey, blacks are the real Jews, you know, using their terms, that's what they had a problem with, and they called that anti-Semitic. But the problem is that all these references, like I was saying, before 1850, the Jews were calling themselves black. The Jews, you know, people around them were referring to them as dark, right? And the term anti-Semitic did not refer to a person calling a Jew black. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, the way they're applying it today is not applicable to before 1850. So that's the problem. That's what I'm saying. Like, if the Kanyes and the Nick Cannons, if they had this information, man, they could shut that thing down real quick. Like, Kanye could basically say, "Well, wait a minute, if you're saying it because I'm saying I'm black, well, here's the references," and they'll just have to choke on that.
Absolutely, and that's the and to your point, Benet, is that they're not showing sources. See, when you don't show sources, people are going to automatically take it as if you're giving opinions. But if they show sources, say, hey, you know, according to this right here, according to this right here, now it makes it hard, you know, because the playbook is if you can't beat their argument, then you beat the person. You know what I mean? You know, you slander the person,
right?
You know, so that way no one wants to hear what they have to say. You know, and that's the case of what we see in many cases is that they'll go at the person and say, you know, really, defame the person to make it so that way no one want to hear what that person have to say.
And I think Brother Benaiah is absolutely correct. Even without that statement he made about DEFCON 3, I think he would have still been in the same amount of trouble, simply because he was pointing at us as true Israel and not at them. So it would have pretty much been the same thing as with Nick Cannon. Now, I don't know how Kanye's money is tied up, but it seems to me like he has a more edge on speaking freely more than even Nick Cannon. And that may be why he's saying the things he's saying right now. But at the same time, you know, I think that even if he didn't say that threat, he would have still been labeled as the bad guy and he's speaking lies and so on and so forth. Like was brought out in that interview with the Jewish guy from Tel Aviv, you know, they would have just basically been labeling him as you know, just one that's not right.
Well, and I'm gonna bring up his quote real quick, right? I'm bringing it up real quick. All right, when you read this here, and this is key, he never said that the Jews, far as the Ashkenazi Jews or any of them, are not the people. What he said here was the funny thing is I actually can't be anti-Semitic because black people are actually Jews. You see what I'm saying? He didn't say that they're not. He's saying that you can't call me anti-Semitic. Just what I was been teaching for years, though. How can we, right, which we're also referred to as Afro-Asiatic, how can we be Afro-Asiatic and anti-Semitic when the word Semitic or Semite and all of that they'll tell you that those groups come from Afro-Asiatic.
Right.
So how can you be anti-self according to the laws? So in his comment here, because Kanye, he's made these statements before. Like some of the statements I play is him on I forgot the drink or whatever that channel is. This is stuff he's been saying for years. But as you see here, he never said that they are not the people. He just said, hey, if you want to bring charges to me, no, what he said, if they want to say I'm anti-Semitic, then, hey, actually, he said black people are actual Jews. So I can't be anti-Semitic. I can't hate myself if I'm Semitic.
But Pastor, didn't Nick Cannon take the same position? Didn't he didn't necessarily say that they weren't Jews either, did he? I don't remember
he said that we are the original. That's the difference.
Okay.
He and what's his name? Professor Griff. They were saying we are the original.
I think.
Right?
Well, I think they would still have a problem though, because
what I'm saying is
the trigger word is black.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying though. But this clip that I share with him talking about the Breakfast of Champions, whatever the thing was on,
right?
He's been saying it for years because I've played his stuff for years, right. Even though, yes, many may want to say something to him about that, but what gave him room was the first sentence when he referred to going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people.
Yeah.
See, if he wouldn't have said that there, yes, they would have been looking at him. Some would have been looking at him with, some funny looks, but he never said that they are not the people. And also because you have, quote, black Jews.
Yeah.
But it's just this go round. When he said he's going to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, and he said that he shared a text saying that the Jewish people got Puffy, basically control Puffy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it wasn't just this quote right here, but also he said that the Jewish community got Puffy in the pocket. They own up everything.
Well, Pastor, I think we definitely can't ignore the fact that he did make that threat, and I'm sure that has some credence in them doing what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do believe that if he would have just said black people, like Brother Panea is saying, they still would have had a problem with that, and they still would have been looking to recondition him. I don't even know if he has a handler, so-called handler, or not, but I think they would have really went after him because he is in the spotlight, and the last thing they want to do is hear one of their so-called own person that they're actually grooming and have raised up to be what they are today, to be saying such things like this, because again, remember the nations, they were against us confederately, and they confounded us from being a nation. So, I'm sure that's still their agenda, to basically make sure that we stay where we're at and we don't climb or come up out of our stupor, and that we grab a hold of what Kanye is actually saying, that we are the true people of the book, so.
Didn't he, Kanye, come out with like a song or something about talking about Israel, black folks are Israelites?
I'm not even sure.
Not sure. Okay, I thought he mentioned it in like somebody posted something about like his lyrics. Man, this is like a couple of years ago. I had to see if I can find it, but I thought he brought that out, some time ago.
Yeah. And I think back to your point, Benea, is that, and I think you also mentioned it too, Jay Highstyle, is that they need to show sources when they're having these type of discussions. If they're going to have discussions like this, at least if they share sources, then worst case scenario, like that football player up in Philadelphia, right? He shows sources, even though some of his sources were bad sources, right? But he showed sources, so that was his way, so to speak, his way of escaping some of the ridicule that he was subjected to, because it was like when they went over the sources that he had, some of the sources were bad sources. But if you had some simple sources, like let's just say if we're going to talk about Shemitic, all right, well, let's go and see what the dictionary say about Semite. What is a Semite? Well, it says Afro-Asiatic. So how can an Afro-Asiatic be racist to themselves? And you guys already know we are here. We're going, as far as my cousin Benea, we all going to show sources. So if it's going to be pretty hard for you to try to point the finger or say we said something, because we have sources. We all going to show sources. So I think that, of course, if he showed sources, that still would have put him in a uncomfortable position. But when you show sources, at least you have something that you're showing, and it doesn't come across as being just mere opinions.
Yeah, I have the perfect the perfect example, because I know when I used to put out videos, I would at first I would put out videos and I would put references that would speak to Israel being black. All these references about them being dark, black, swarthy, all these references. But after a while, I was thinking like, man, it's getting redundant. But surely the community at large has got it by now. So you know what? I'll skip it. In my next video, and I'll just go right to the meat of the teaching, right, man? Because I didn't put it in this video, and sure enough, they jumped in the chat talking about, oh, this is the garbage. Oh, this is you guys are making stuff up. You're reappropriating somebody's else's culture. You're culture vultures and stuff like that. That Brother Ron used to say back in the day. And it was like, okay. And that's why to this day, like when I put out, a lesson on, like a history lesson, I always have to pay the water bill, right? I always have to put in the references that speak to Israel being black, right? Israel being, dark, of a darker hue, and then go on to the meat of the lesson, simply because of that fact. You always have to have the references to prove that point, and then go on to your other stuff.
Absolutely, my brother. I mean, with any dissertation, I truly believe that you and Pastor Kelly, y'all have your own dissertation when it comes to true Israel. You have to always include your references. You cannot deny them, because that gives credibility to your work and where you're at and everything and what you're actually looking to prove. So yeah, never deny your sources. That's for sure. Your references. Right. That's for sure.
Yeah. And that's what we have to do. And I think that's what Kanye West's issue was. He didn't show sources. And ultimately, Nick Cannon, they had you saying we're the original people and you're not showing no sources. It makes it easier for people to, respond to them.
Yep. Yeah, Pastor, maybe Kanye West should have teamed up with you guys. He probably would have been better off.
Well, he just strike me as the type that don't listen. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, and I'm gonna tell you, if he's according to the reports, a billionaire, his value, his worth is $6 billion. He shouldn't, he should have his own platform and not being worried about being banned from somebody else's platform. You know what I mean? $6 billion. Man, they have a certain way of communicating. You know what I mean? That's why Donald Trump don't care. And according to Forbes, Kanye has more wealth than Donald Trump. So wow. I just think that he should be a lot better with, just how his messaging and just how he does things. I mean, to have that type,
and even having his material together,
Exactly.
I mean, just making blanket statements like you're saying is not going to cut it, especially a man of his stature. He should definitely have, like Benea is saying, he should definitely have references and sources and stuff like that. And even you, Pastor Kelly, was saying the same thing. He has to have it. You figure with all the money in the world he has, he would be able to do that. But I don't know. I mean, I think he's a bit unstable, if you ask me. He keeps going back and forth. but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I believe he is. That's why I say it's like, man, when he was wearing that Black Lives Matter shirts, and I mean, not Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, and the stuff that he had going on with that comedian, what's his name, Davidson or whatever. It's just all kinds of stuff. It's like, man, for me, he's just all over the place.
Go ahead, cuz
no, go ahead, cuz you good.
No, I was gonna say I'm surprised that nobody photoshopped a KKK hood on top of both of the people in that picture.
Man, you gonna give somebody an idea, man. Before you know, somebody gonna be emailing me.
The White Lives Matter on the back with the hoodie.
Man, I tell you, well, like I said, that's why I wanted to do this lesson tonight. Is just to use sources to show that even though I don't agree with his antics and everything, but we have to be fair. He did not say, when he asked that question, or when he said, "How can I be anti-Semitic when blacks are Jews, actual Jews?" Well, that's what I wanted to touch on. Is like, wait a minute, they already label us as Afro-Asiatic. You can't get around it. We are Afro-Asiatic, but no one they'll come up with some new title for us, right? But if we're Afro-Asiatic and Semites is from Afro-Asiatics, is a subgroup, then how can we be anti-Semitic?
Right. What does the Afro and Afro-Asiatic stand for?
Afar, I think it stands for the pick with the fist on it.
Right.
No, but that's dealing with Africa.
Yep.
Yeah. And what Asiatic, the Asian area, you can correct me if I'm quoting it wrong.
No, you good. I think I had done a lesson on it. I think at one point. I think if you look it up in the etymology online, it'll point you back to your point, like either Africa or something, black or something like that. So, I mean, it is what you expect it to be, and so to your point, there's no way around it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Afro-Asiatic is actually referring to the language. Am I right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, initially that word Semite or Semitic was referring to a group of languages as well. But then when you get to like the 16th, 17th century is when it began to get secondary meanings to it. Same thing with that word Jew. Up into the 16th century, in this evolution in Old English, it was being used as a transliteration of some would say Yehudi, while others would say Yahweh, but it was supposed to be a transliteration of Judah, right? Pointing to either the tribe of Judah, the southern kingdom of Judah, or the son Judah, but not being used interchangeable with Israel. But that occurred in the 4th century. And Benjamin Friedman makes it clear, he really goes in on that the history of the word Jew, the history of the word Semite, he really goes in on that. So, but yeah, guys, I'm gonna have to take it down. Good thing I'm working from home tomorrow.
Me too,
because I'm hanging on a thread. I am hanging on a thread. We just celebrated Tabernacles over the weekend, and just the time it took to prepare for it, a couple of days, and man, it just wore me out. It wore me out. So, but yeah, any final words? Any garbage cans you guys want to give to anyone?
Well, Pastor, I don't necessarily want to give a person the garbage can, but the word anti-Semitic, I want to give that the garbage can.
Yeah, word of confusion. Absolutely.
Yeah, that is confusing. Very.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll give it the garbage can. And what about you, cuz?
Well, I guess it'd be just mainstream media in general, because I always wanted to fan the flames or jump on the bandwagon, when the Ashkenazis feel as though that they're, I don't know, impacted by somebody saying that the Jews are black. That's, even though there's all sorts, like you were saying before, there's all sorts of references that say, that prove it to be so. They, for whatever reason, we know why. I won't say what for whatever reason, but they're going to keep pushing this alternative narrative until, all the way until the end.
All right, we'll put the media out there. We'll give them the garbage can. And for me, Kanye, because for me, he just sets us back, because anytime he has to apologize, put himself in a position to apologize, right? It just sets us back. Oh man, excuse me. I'm trying to clear my throat. But and what I mean by that is, like Nick Cannon, they're saying we're the people of the book, but then they backtrack because they didn't show sources. Now they gotta backtrack, and like Nick Cannon, he had to be kind of schooled on his own channel about what's Semite and anti-Semitic and all that other stuff is. It just, for me, I'm giving him the garbage can because of just how reckless he's been, inconsistent he's been with this information. So I'm gonna give Kanye West the garbage can.
The ironic takeaway from the Nick Cannon incident, though, was that, so after all, that stuff went down with Nick Cannon, and you saw the like J. Lifestyle would say, like, his handlers, right, show up and want to re-educate him, on the history of Jews. Did you notice that they didn't have sources? I mean, literally, when they showed up, like because he had right. a couple of follow-up interviews or sessions or what do you want to call it, because they didn't have references, like none. Or the one of the critiques that I bring out, when it comes to us proving who we are, but when the other side tries to prove who they are, they do this thing that I refer to as self-validate. Like they'll quote each other all the time. It's like, no, we're the Jews because such and such over there in that university, he says that we're the Jews, but he's a modern day contemporary. He's not someone from back in the day, and they do that like all the time. They self-validate all the time. But
right, Benea, I just want to add to that because what you're saying, it really speaks volumes. Especially when they use even contemporary sources. The contemporary sources that they use nowadays pretty much validates who they are. And it pretty much backs up their own agenda. But like when you do your research, you usually go back to the original sources, like way back when. Right. And I feel that's the correct way of doing it. Absolutely. Why not pull from those that were actually there during that time, during that era, than from people that really weren't around when all this went down. So yeah, I very much agree with what you're saying.
Absolutely. Well, family, I'm like on my last legs. I don't want to start saying stuff like, Susie sells, she sells, and all that stuff. Start sleep talking. But I really appreciate you, fam. Brother, my buddy Jay Highstyle and my cousin. But I really appreciate you guys for being on tonight and sharing your thoughts. And family, the conversation don't have to end. You can continue the conversations in the comment section. But again, with Kanye West, just wanted to give some clarity on his comments and give you sources so that way you can come up with your own verdict based upon historical information, not opinions. So really appreciate you guys. Thank you again, my cousin Benaya, Jay Highstyle, and family. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. And we are going to call it a night. And just remember, in the words of Moses through the Most High to Israel, Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14, fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of the Most High. These Egyptians that you see today, you don't ever have to deal with them again because the Most High will fight for you. But we have to do one key thing that we as a people are struggling with, especially with social media. Learn how to be quiet. Can't go back, can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14, verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was the... Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel, according to Genesis chapter 10.